Story time about how my sister was hooking up with my boyfriend. Little background information, I was 15 and in 10th grade, and I have never had a boyfriend before. Any guy that I was sort of talking to, we never made it out of the talking stage. But fast forward, I met this one guy who we're gonna call Jake, and because of how tragic my love life was, I didn't expect us to get into a relationship, but he ended up asking me to be his girlfriend. So of course I said yes. I was super excited that I had a boyfriend, and then he met my family. And my older sister and I were like super close, so I told her all about him, and she just couldn't wait to meet him. Real quick, I just want to give a big shout out to Lumino for sponsoring today's video. Lumino Whitening Kit is one of the best ways to whiten your teeth without paying hundreds of dollars, especially if you have sensitive teeth. This is the next best thing. Although I have veneers, they only cover the front of my teeth, so my teeth can still be very sensitive to certain chemicals that other brands use in their products. If you guys want to go check out their 7-pack for under $15, the link is in my bio. So whenever he met my sister, she was being super talkative to him, and I thought it was just because she was excited to meet him, like for part 2. Part 2 about how I found out my sister was hooking up with my boyfriend. So like I said, he came over, he met my sister, they got along super well. Fast forward, my parents decided to have a family gathering, and my sister was like begging me to invite my boyfriend, which I didn't plan on inviting him at all because my family is super annoying and would make a big deal about the fact that this is my first boyfriend. She was like, okay, but if you guys are seriously in a relationship, I think that he should meet your family. So I ended up inviting him. So my mom called me to the kitchen to help pass out drinks, which was super annoying because my sister was literally doing fucking nothing. So after I'm done with that, I'm looking for my boyfriend and he's nowhere to be found. So I go upstairs, and as I'm about to walk up the stairs, both of them come down. And when I asked what was wrong, like why they were upstairs together, she was like, oh, I was showing him to the bathroom, which I felt super weird about, but because she was my sister, I let it go, because you're supposed to trust your family.
Marilyn Monroe's death has been considered to be one of the most horrific Hollywood tragedies of all time. In the early hours of August 5th, 1962, Marilyn's housekeeper woke up with a horrible feeling. She went to Marilyn's room and noticed that the door was locked and the light was still on inside. So she decided to call her psychiatrist, Dr. Greenson. When he came over, he climbed up onto her window to be able to get a good look into her room and saw that she was lying face down in her bed with a telephone receiver in her hand. 36-year-old Marilyn was unconscious, and Dr. Greenson broke into her room. Dr. Engelberg, who had prescribed pills for the actress, called the police at 4:20 a.m. and they arrived to the scene shortly after, declaring her dead. After taking an autopsy, it was stated that her life ended after taking too many barbiturates. After a life filled with trauma and a remaking of her identity for Hollywood and becoming an icon for so many people. So let's get into the backstory. Marilyn was born in Los Angeles in 1926 and originally known as Norma Jean Baker. Her mother was a film cutter, and her father's identity was never really known. Marilyn's mother was diagnosed with schizophrenia after a mental breakdown, and she shuffled between foster homes in fear of being institutionalized like her mom. In 1942, she began modeling, and in 1946, she signed a contract with 20th Century Fox. She then became known as Marilyn Monroe and started off with just getting some small parts in the early 1950s, but later grew to more lead roles. As Marilyn's fame increased, her mental health decreased, and around this time developed dependence on alcohol and pills and was deemed difficult to work with. She was institutionalized briefly in 1961, and then publicly fired from her movie Something's Got to Give in 1962. So it seems logical to think that her mental health was a big part of her taking her own life. So, case closed, right? Well, what if I told you that the alternative theory was murder? And this theory involves secret affairs, the Kennedys, the FBI, and Frank Sinatra. I'll explain in the next part. Was Marilyn Monroe actually murdered? Well, a theory ended up coming out that she had an affair with President JFK and his brother Robert Kennedy. He's also known as Bobby. And the theory goes is that she was murdered by them because she knew too much. Dr. Peter Lawford introduced her to JFK in 1961. Their alleged affair was short-lived after them only meeting a handful of times. With him running for re-election, he was basically not wanting a Monica Lewinsky-type scandal, so he decided to set her up with his attorney brother, Bobby. And even though he was married, they began their affair shortly after. But as her image kind of shifted in the public eye because of her pills and drinking, the brothers had to separate a little bit from her. Bobby tried to break up with Marilyn, but Marilyn threatened to go public with both affairs, stating that she was going to blow the lid off this whole damn thing. And it was theorized that she was around for several confidential conversations. It was possible that she knew top secret information about government affairs, like a plan to kill Fidel Castro, and information about Area 51. And in 1962, whenever she sang Happy Birthday, Mr. President, this was considered considered to be extremely scandalous. So it may have ended up becoming imperative for the Kennedys to keep her silent, and they may have staged her death to make it look like she had done it herself. But what other evidence is there? With the Freedom of Information Act of 2006, one of the documents shared that Robert may have been complicit in an attempt to induce the actresses unaliving. And the others implicated in the document was Dr. Peter Lawford, Ralph Greenson, the housekeeper, and Pat Newcomb. It was inferred in the documents that this was an alleged plot put in place in order to silence her after she threatened to reveal her affairs. On her last doctor's visit, she was prescribed 60 tablets, which was an unusual quantity because she was seen so frequently. And on the night of her death, the housekeeper put the bottle of pills on her night table. Furthering this theory came with the JFK files in 2017. This included a letter to Robert stating that there was a book that threatened to release information about the affair, several claims that Robert visited Marilyn on the night of her death, and allegedly there was a call made to Peter Lawford to find out if Marilyn was dead. In late July of 1962, after Marilyn was heartbroken, she went to Lake Tahoe to spend the weekend with Peter Lawford, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis, and so many others. And she was allegedly invited by Frank Sinatra in order to persuade her not to go public with the affair. She returned from this trip to LA and died 5 days later. There was also several witness reports from the neighborhood stating that they heard a woman scream, quote, "Murderers, you murderers, are you satisfied that she's dead?" A lot of their relationship has remained sealed for national security reasons, so it's hard to prove anything. I went ghost hunting on my YouTube at the Roosevelt Hotel, a place where Marilyn lived at for a couple of years, so I was hoping I could ask some of these questions.
Crime Fanatic Friday Part 2, The Girl Scout Murders. On June 13, 1977, the bodies of 3 young girls attending Girl Scout camp in Locust Grove, Oklahoma is found stuffed in their sleeping bags along the trail. Police find an overwhelming amount of evidence that points to a 33-year-old man named Gene Leroy Hart. He had been sentenced to life in prison years earlier for kidnapping and sexually assaulting 2 pregnant women. However, he had escaped from jail and believed to still be in the area when the murders took place. Following a 10-month search, a tip led police to a cabin in Cherokee County, 45 miles away from Camp Scott, where they arrested Hart. Remembering that Hart had tried on the eyeglasses of the 2 Tulsa women he assaulted in 1966, and remembering the eyeglasses that were stolen and discarded from the tents at Camp Scott, it was noticed by all of the arresting officers that Hart was wearing women's glasses upon his arrest. A trial took place on March 19, 1979, but the jury found him not guilty and acquitted him. However, he did return to prison for his original crimes, where he died of a heart attack on June 4, 1979, at the age of 35. The case went cold until DNA testing became more advanced. In the 1980s, a decade after Hart's death, a DNA test carried out on case evidence showed 3 of the 5 probes matched Hart's DNA. In 2008, there was a breakthrough when DNA tests were conducted on a pillowcase. Evidence appeared to show a partial female DNA profile. Although the experts confirmed the DNA didn't belong to 2 of the victims, they couldn't exclude the possibility of it belonging to the 3rd victim. However, many people, including Lori Farmer's mother, believe that there was a female present during the murders. Although a lot of evidence points towards Hart, none of it's 100% conclusive and the case remains unsolved. Camp Scott was shut down after the murders and never reopened. The girls' parents became advocates for victims and their families. Michelle Gousset's father established the Victims' Bill of Rights in Oklahoma and the Oklahoma Victims' Compensation Board. This bill keeps victims and families involved in every step of the legal process. Lori Farmer's mother founded the Oklahoma chapter of Parents of Murdered Children. This organization is dedicated to providing assistance and support to families of homicide victims. Imagine sending your children off to Girl Scout camp only for it to be the last time you see them alive. In June of 1997, 3 families sent their daughters, Lori Farmer, 8, Michelle Gousset, 9, and Denise Milner, 10, off to Camp Scott Girl Scout camp in Locust Grove, Oklahoma. Doris Denise Milner had told her mother earlier that day before she boarded the bus that she didn't want to go, but her mother told her everything would be fine and if she didn't feel well when she got there, then to give them a call and they'd pick her up. Sadly, Doris Miller never got to make any calls to her mother after that day. That night, the 3 girls went to sleep in their tents and a thunderstorm rolled into the early hours of the next morning. The tents were fanned out around the counselors' quarters in order to keep an eye on the girls. However, the tent that Farmer, Gousset, and Milner were in was the farthest and hardest to see. A counselor named Carla Willite heard a guttural moan sound coming from the main road and went to investigate, but ended up assuming that it was an animal from the main road and returned to bed. The next morning at 6 a.m., she made a grisly discovery on her way to the showers. She discovered the bodies of the 3 girls on the side of the trail in their sleeping bags nearly 150 yards from their tent. When police arrived, they found the girls' tent covered in blood. These 3 young, innocent girls had been sexually assaulted and murdered in gruesome ways. As they investigated the events of that night, they found out the strange noises that several other campers heard throughout the night. Around 1:30 a.m., multiple people heard moaning noises, which is around the same time that Willite heard it and went to investigate but couldn't find the source. Approximately 30 minutes later, a camper in Tent 7 was awoken by someone with a flashlight opening the flap to the tent. Around 3 in the morning, another girl heard a scream coming from where Tent 8 was located, which is the tent that the girls were staying in. At the same time, another camper heard a scream followed by someone crying, "Mama, Mama!" Unsure what to do, both girls went back to sleep. Throughout the 400-acre campsite, they found duct tape, rope, a flashlight, and women's eyeglasses in tent number 8. The flashlight had newspaper stuffed inside to keep the batteries from rattling and duct tape over the lens to dull the light. The duct tape and rope matched the kind that was used on the 3 girls. In a nearby cave, police found evidence that someone had been living inside. The newspapers inside matched the issue that was inside the flashlight. If that wasn't enough evidence, the words, "The killer was here, bye-bye fools, 77-6-17 were written on the cave wall. Police were hoping that all of this evidence would lead them to the killer. Storytime about how I got revenge on my 7th grade bully. When I was in 7th grade, there was this one boy that would not stop picking on me. He would pour all of my stuff out of my bag, cut my hair, push me in the hallways, spill my drinks and snacks, plus many other annoying and embarrassing things. One day, he decided he was going to pour a bucket of fruit punch on top of me. I was wearing an expensive, mostly white outfit. This was because it was picture day and I wanted to look nice. I ended up having to go take pictures with messed up hair and clothing, then got chewed out by my father when I got home. I was grounded for a month because my parents were strict and they didn't want to listen to my story. The next day, I was sitting in math class when my principal walked and sat down on a chair to supervise the class. My principal sat down his things and went into the hallway to talk to my teacher. I grabbed his computer and put it in my bag. Everyone was too busy with their groups to notice. The bell rang shortly after, and while everyone went to lunch, I went to my locker and opened the principal's computer. I quickly searched up different websites and then put the computer in my bully's locker. I knew the code because my locker is right next to his and he's always asking someone to help him open it. I rushed to the cafeteria and saw that my principal was still talking to my teacher, so he didn't know it was missing yet. Next period, everyone was getting questioned because the principal knew someone took his computer. After opening everyone's bag and finding nothing, he decided to search other areas, like the lockers. He went through everyone's locker until he found it in the boys' locker. After seeing what he looked up, him stealing it and him lying, he earned 3 days of ISS. After he was done, he told everyone that his parents grounded him for a year. Everyone made fun of him constantly until the end of 8th grade when they finally got over it. I think he somehow knew I did it because he started being way nicer to me and paid for all of the stuff that he damaged. In middle school, I had a crush, as we all do, and I'll never forget the day when he looked over to his friend and was like, "Why are her arms so hairy?" That was the day that I started shaving, and I totally regret it because shaving and waxing is such a hassle. That's why I got an at-home laser kit. This is the Sapphire IPL hair removal device from YouLike, and I'm so excited to try it. The packaging was so cute, especially this little razor. As a Persian woman, I grow hair everywhere. My legs have always been the worst, so I'm using it on my legs. I made sure to clean and shave my legs first. Then I pulled out these glasses it comes with because I got 20/20 vision, so I need to protect my eyes and so do you. The device is easy to hold and not heavy at all. I turned it on with the button on the side and went to town. I started on the lowest setting first and then bumped it up to the highest setting. I was shocked because I thought it was going to hurt, but it didn't at all. It also has cool air blowing as you zap so you don't feel any discomfort. It was super easy to use and I'm excited to see the results after a few weeks. YouLike is currently offering an $80 discount on Amazon and 30 days to exchange or return. So if you're like me and tired of constantly shaving, the YouLike Sapphire IPL hair removal device is the way to go. Storytime about the scariest thing that I saw when I was sleeping over at my friend's house. When I was 14, me and my best friend were having a sleepover. We were staying up late on FaceTime with a boy and we were laughing and having fun. I kept hearing noises from the hallway the whole time, but I just blew it off as the AC or something. She ended up going to the bathroom and around 4 in the morning, I was sitting in the room by myself and the lights were off. I felt breathing on my neck and I kept hearing whispers. This is when I got kind of freaked out and when my friend came back in, she asked me what was wrong and I told her that all night I felt like something was watching us and I could hear someone whispering. We both went to a different room so that we could calm down because she thought it wouldn't be so freaky. After an hour of being in the other room, I started hearing chanting and footsteps outside of the door and I started losing it. She asked me what was wrong because tears were flowing down my face but I had no voice and I couldn't move. When I got the courage to speak, I asked, "Can you see it?" And she said, "See what?" And I told her that I saw a tall thing in a cloak walking around her room. We ran to the door, but that got its attention. The door handle wouldn't move, so the door wouldn't open, and the thing kept walking closer and closer with its hand out reaching for my face. Finally, the door opens and her mom comes running in asking why we were screaming. My friend hid behind her mom while I fell to the floor crying. I told her mom what I saw and she immediately checked the room. She told me there was nothing there, but when I turned to face her, it was standing right behind her on my friend's bed staring at the wall across the room. I started to not be able to breathe and begged her to take me home. She told us to go to bed and me and my friend were too scared to. Then all of a sudden the thing turns into smoke and goes into the ceiling. Me and my friend sat in the hallway all night until she got so tired that she went back to her bed. I sat on the floor of her room too scared to sleep and eventually I woke up out of nowhere having no idea how I had fallen asleep. I went home and I went to bed and I had the most terrifying nightmare of that thing carrying me around while I was lifeless. I haven't been the same since. I constantly put protecting sigils in my room and on the doors and windows. I haven't seen that thing since, but I don't want to risk seeing it again. My friend moved and now another family lives in the house with the tall cloaked monster. I hope they don't have the same experience me and my friend had. Am I the asshole for telling my daughter that I didn't feel bad for not letting her cut her hair the way she wanted? I, 46 female, have a daughter, 15 female. She has always been a bit boyish for a girl ever since she was younger. Instead of wearing dresses, she'd wear shirts and pants with small little boy shoes. People often asked if my daughter was a boy. I would answer no because she was my little girl. As she got older, I began to ask her to wear dresses to social gatherings we went to. I immigrated to the US in 2006, a year before I had my daughter. I was born and raised in Bangladesh. She would always comply and wear our dresses, though often she would wear a kurta and dress like a boy still. I didn't mind because it meant that she could be a bit girly. My friends often commented on how beautiful she looked when she wore dresses and looked feminine. However, recently, I've noticed my daughter has been trying to act more like a man. I thought she was in a phase because when she was younger, she got bullied by the other kids in the group. She still gets mad over it. However, I took her to the hair salon for a haircut recently because she asked. I obliged because she wanted to change up her hairstyle again. She always had a habit of doing so. I noticed she was secretive with her hairstyle and I immediately knew something was up. The hairstylist working on her asked me if I was okay with her chopping my daughter's hair up to her ears. I got confused and asked her to show me the photo. She did and I got mad. I told her that I wouldn't let her do the hairstyle. It wouldn't look good on her because it was too manly. The hairstylist asked me how much she should chop off and I told her to the collarbone. My daughter began to cry and make a scene in front of the hairstylist and the instructor who had walked over. I began telling her to pull herself together and to stop throwing a tantrum. She knew she wasn't allowed to have short hair because she didn't know how to take care of her hair properly. We eventually finished up and I told her we had to go. As I paid, she immediately barged out the front door. I found her in the back. I told her to get in the car and we had to go home. She gave me the silent treatment the entire day until I entered her room and asked her what she wanted for dinner. She immediately went off on me, calling me every name under the sun and calling me a bad mother. She demanded an apology from me when I told her that I didn't feel guilty whatsoever for what I did. I wouldn't apologize to her. Girls aren't supposed to have short hair. She must have gone talking about it because I've been getting calls and texts. To go to the other room, then started berating me, asking what the hell I just did. I was so confused by his language, not knowing what he meant. He told me it was not okay for me to take my medication in front of his kids. I was like, why not? And he started ranting about how his kids shouldn't see this stuff and that I should have went to my room or any other room to take my medication if it was so important to me. I was shocked my mom didn't even say anything at the time, which really got me questioning what I did. He then said those are my step-siblings, they're of young age and should not be exposed to such sights, and that I'm gonna have to come up with a better way to deal with my condition and medication intake because he doesn't want his kids exposed to that once we all start living together as a family. I told him it wasn't my problem, which caused the argument to escalate. My mom sided with him and I had to go to my room to calm down a bit. After he and his kids left, my mom picked another argument with me saying I should have been more considerate of the kids seeing my medication and said that Jeff has a point, but I was being too rude to him. She told me she's expecting me to apologize and get it right with Jeff next time he visits, but I said no. Now I'm punished for the next weekend for my attitude towards my stepdad. So Am I the asshole for telling my in-laws about what their son's girlfriend did to my son's blanket, causing her to get shunned? I, female 33, found out that my ex-husband, male 37, was cheating on me when I was 7 months pregnant with our son. I got a divorce and we share custody of our 3-year-old son now. My ex-husband's girlfriend tried to get involved with my parenting several times. She even commented on my son's name, implying that we should agree on a name that we all want, not just what I wanted, and try to dictate what he should and shouldn't have. As a result, she started throwing out stuff of his that I paid for myself. Honestly, it's frustrating because I'm barely getting by with money that I have and can't afford to buy a replacement for all the stuff that she throws out, but my ex-husband said it's her house and she gets to decide on what can and can't enter. I made a crocheted blanket for my son with his name on it. This blanket is special to me, and the tools I used to be able to make it cost me money, not to mention the time and effort it took to get it done. I sent my son to stay with his dad a few days ago, and he wanted to take the blanket with him to sleep in it. I don't know exactly what happened, but when I came to pick him up, he told me that his dad's girlfriend took it away from him and threw it out, leaving him with no blanket to sleep with that night as a punishment for him not accepting the one that she offered. I was furious. I called his dad, but he hung up on me, and I sent him a text explaining the situation, but he texted back telling me that I should stop the drama and go look for a job if I have so much free time on my hand instead of picking on his girlfriend. I felt frustrated. I visited my family who are good to me and told them about what their son's girlfriend did. Now it's worth mentioning that she's been working hard for their approval to get on their good side. They were shocked to know about what she did and they all flipped out on her and started calling her out. My sister-in-law took it further by putting this on social media, which made the other family members see what she did. My ex-husband called me yelling about my pathetic attempt to turn his family against his girlfriend. I could hear her freaking out in the background while he was lashing out at me, saying I ruined every chance she had to have a good relationship with her future in-laws. I hung up and felt absolutely horrible, even though I was just venting to his family about what happened and felt frustrated. Maybe I shouldn't have told them? I'm not sure anymore since the whole family isn't speaking to her, so that might have a lasting impact on the relationship with her. So